And I want to start by acknowledging those that are in the hunger strike, that are incarcerated here, and there are also hunger strikes that are happening in our prison system around the state. And I want to recognize all of them. I was actually at San Quentin a few weeks back for a press conference because the response to COVID in our prison and jail system has been either slow or non-existent. And now, as you know with COVID, as we've seen, if you react slowly, you're reacting too late. And not only are incarcerated dying from COVID, but even some of the prison guards are dying and being forced to work. And so we have to remember that this system strips away the humanity of all of us, no matter what role we play in it. And so when we talk about the movements that are right now, people are out in the streets talking about, it's got to be movements based on love for everyone that's part of the system, no matter where they come from. And right now, what we're doing is trying to redefine things. And definitions are important. And as folks are marching millions around the nation, they're learning a lot right now about our nation. They're learning a lot about what definitions mean. And what I mean by that, by definitions, is if someone's busted selling drugs, we call them a drug dealer. We send them to prison. Yet we have these big pharmaceutical companies that sell deadly drugs, and yet they're Fortune 100 companies.
Thank you.
If someone steals food from a grocery store because they're hungry, we lock them up and say they're a thief. Yet when McDonald's sells poison and treats their workers like garbage, they're a part of Americana, right? When a worker steals a few bucks from the cash register because they're getting paid dirt wages and want to make sure that they can pay rent, we lock them up. We put it on their record so they can't get another job again. Yet, when we have companies around this entire nation literally stealing billions of dollars from workers through wage theft, all that does is increase their bottom line and their stocks go up. And so I mention that because we've been ingrained, all of us have been ingrained in some ways in some of this intentional creation of what it means to be good and bad, what it means to be part of society and not part of society. When in reality, we all collectively can make those definitions. And we can do that together in a very meaningful way. This state became the incarceration capital of the world, and that wasn't, with our friends here from Debug, it wasn't a bug, it was a feature in the system. It was by design. By design, young, black and brown, mostly young people, poor people, locked up intentionally to create a prison industrial complex that we are now in the process of trying to dismantle. But when we talk about that, we have to talk about what the definitions, what public safety means. It's critically important for us as a community to decide what public safety means. Because with all this incarceration, with all, over decades now, the same communities that have suffered through mass incarceration haven't gotten safer.
That part.
But a lot of people have gotten rich off of it, off of this system. And so there are a lot of things happening in the legislature right now. And we only have 2 more weeks left in this session. It's been a very shortened session because of the COVID crisis and our inability to be able to meet as regularly as we could have. But we are going to be in Sacramento over the next couple of weeks on a whole slew of bills, a bunch of bills that are going through that I don't know if they'll make it. I don't know if they'll make it to the floor. I don't know if they'll get voted in. We're talking about reducing probation, parole terms. We're talking about allowing, trying to get our elderly incarcerated out on parole because they're dying in there. They're dying while they're incarcerated. We're talking about more police accountability, allowing independent investigation of officer shootings by the Attorney General, and on and on and on. There's a whole set, probably a good dozen or more bills right now that are going to the legislature. And I want to talk about the bill that I have, AB 2542, the Racial Justice Act. And so the Racial Justice Act would allow any accused to be able to make a claim that race played a role in their arrest, in the trial, in the conviction, in the sentencing. So it could be that, okay, at the end of the day, someone gets busted for stealing something, but they add a gang enhancement because they're saying that person's a gang member. If they can show that that gang enhancement was added and use data to show that it was added based upon race, they can get that enhancement stricken. If you're in some small town up in Northern California and there's a little strip of highway and 95% of the people being pulled over for DUI are people of color, well, you can use that data and say, you know what? We've got to fix this. And I'm a victim of the racism that's embedded in our system. So those are very specific examples, but in general, it's about rooting out racism from our criminal justice system, which is so embedded. I mean, they talk about bad apples, but the reality is the root is rotten. And we have to redesign our criminal justice system so that there's justice for everyone. And when I presented this bill has almost died like 10 times this year. We brought it back. Last week, we were able to hear it on a Friday. We got it through the Public Safety Committee of the Senate. So it's currently in Senate Appropriations, but I want to tell you about the hearing because the opposition side can choose anyone they want to present the opposition to the bill. And so I presented, and then I had Brendan Woods, the public defender from Alameda County, spoke. Amber Rose Howard from CURB spoke, and they did a phenomenal job. And then the opposition, well, the DA's Association opposes the bill. But I will tell you, we've had some really constructive conversations with DAs around the state about it because they're curious. And I say, well, if this goes, these are our suggestions, how would it work? And we're having some pretty good conversations with individual DAs, but the DAs Association is opposed. So I thought they're going to have a DAs Association person that would testify. I was actually surprised when they said, speaking on behalf of opposition is Jeff Rosen. And literally on behalf of all DAs, and then he had Jeff Rubin, one of his deputies, speak in opposition to the bill. So keep in mind that when we talk about Black Lives Matter and we have folks out in the street and all that, sometimes people talk about it as if it's something that's happening in some other part of the country or other part of the state. But right now, as I'm trying to get this Racial Justice Act through, we have our DA that's coming out speaking against it. And some of the arguments they're using is that it's going to be impractical because it's going to bring the criminal justice system to a halt. Well, that says two things. First of all, it says that you also believe that there's a whole bunch of racism in our system, and that's why it would have that dramatic an impact. Right. But it's not true. It won't bring the system to a halt. We have some public defenders here that can speak to the fact that we have motions all the time on really in-depth issues that get heard. They figure it out. And so that's not true. But even if it were true, maybe our system does need to be brought to a halt.